Jake Morrison was not supposed to be here. He was just a maintenance guy who fixed broken equipment on the spaceship. The real scientists were the ones who belonged on this planet, digging through old ruins and taking pictures of ancient alien stuff. Jake just repaired things when they broke down. The planet was called Kepler 442b, and it was nothing like Earth. It had two suns that painted the sky in shades of orange and purple during sunset. The air was thin but breathable, and the temperature was always cool. The ruins covered miles of empty land, all built from some kind of white stone that seemed to glow when the light hit it just right. Jake had been on the planet for 3 days now, fixing the atmospheric processors that kept the base camp running. The processors kept breaking because of the dust that got into everything. It was boring work, but somebody had to do it. The scientists were too busy measuring things and writing notes to care about the broken machines. The team leader was Dr. Lisa Crawford, a woman in her 50s who took everything way too seriously. She walked around the ruins like she was in a church, whispering to her assistants and treating every broken rock like it was made of gold. Jake thought she needed to relax a little. His friend Connor worked as a data technician on the ship. Connor had come down to the surface that morning to deliver some new equipment, and the two of them had eaten lunch together near the dig site. Connor was the kind of guy who made jokes about everything, which is probably why he and Jake got along so well. "You should do something crazy," Connor had said, grinning while he ate his sandwich. "All these scientists are so serious. Just once, I want to see one of them actually have fun." "Like what?" Jake asked. "I don't know. Kiss that big statue in the plaza or something." "I'll give you 20 credits if you do it." Jake laughed. 20 credits was nothing, barely enough to buy a beer back on the ship. But the idea was funny enough that it stuck in his head all afternoon. The statue stood in the center of what used to be a city plaza. It was huge, at least 15 feet tall, carved from some kind of crystal material that was different from the white stone everywhere else. The statue showed a person, or at least something that looked sort of like a person. It had arms and legs and a head, but the proportions were all wrong. The arms were too long, the fingers too thin, and the face was beautiful in a way that made Jake uncomfortable to look at for too long. Dr. Crawford said the statue was probably a god or a leader of the aliens who used to live here. The aliens were called the architects, though nobody knew if that was what they actually called themselves. They had disappeared 1,000 years ago, leaving behind empty cities and no clues about where they went. Jake finished his work around 4 in the afternoon. The processors were running smoothly again, and the scientists would be busy for hours taking measurements and samples. He had nothing else to do, so he wandered through the ruins alone. The plaza was quiet. The wind made a low whistling sound as it blew between the old buildings. Jake stood in front of the statue, looking up at its face. In the fading light of the two suns, the crystal seemed to glow from inside, like there was a light bulb hidden somewhere in there. He thought about Connor's dare. It was stupid. It was childish. It was exactly the kind of thing that would make the serious scientists shake their heads at him. That made it even more appealing. Jake looked around to make sure nobody was watching. The plaza was empty. He could hear voices in the distance where the team was working, but they were too far away to see him. "This is ridiculous," he said out loud to himself. But he was grinning. He stepped up onto the pedestal where the statue stood and leaned forward. The crystal was cool against his lips when he kissed it, smooth like glass. He held the kiss for a moment, feeling absolutely stupid, then stepped back down. That was when the statue's eyes opened. Jake froze. His brain tried to make sense of what he was seeing, but it didn't work. Statues didn't have eyes that could open. Statues didn't move. But the eyes were definitely open now, staring down at him with a color he couldn't quite describe. Not blue, not green, but something in between that seemed to shift as he looked at it. The surface of the statue rippled like water. The crystal became soft, moving and changing shape. Jake stumbled backward, his heart hammering so hard he could hear it in his ears. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The statue smiled. The crystal face changed from hard stone into something that looked like skin, pale and smooth. Then it spoke, and the voice was like music mixed with wind. "I've been waiting for you." The words were in English. Perfect, clear English. Jake's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The statue moved. It stepped down from the pedestal with smooth, graceful movements that didn't look quite human. As it moved, the crystal continued changing into flesh. Within seconds, what had been a statue was now a living being, tall and strange, and impossibly beautiful. "My name is Lyra," the being said. She tilted her head to one side, studying Jake with those impossible eyes. "And you are the first to wake me in 1,000 years, the first human to prove your species worthy." Jake finally found his voice. "What? You kissed me," Lyra said, as if that explained everything. "You woke me with genuine affection given freely without thought of reward or worship. Do you understand what you have done?" "I was just joking around," Jake managed to say. His voice sounded high and strange to his own ears. "My friend dared me. I didn't think anything would happen." Lyra smiled wider. "Exactly. That is why it worked. That is why you were chosen." "Chosen for what?" "To inherit the legacy of the architects, to bring your species into the light of true knowledge. To change the fate of the galaxy." Jake stared at her. His brain was trying to process too many impossible things at once. The statue was alive. She was talking. She knew English. She was saying things about legacies and galaxies, and none of it made any sense. "I think I need to sit down," he said weakly. "There is no time," Lyra said. Her expression became serious. "The awakening has sent a signal across space. Others will have detected it. They will come here, and they will not be kind to your species. We must return to your people immediately. There is much I need to tell you and very little time to explain." She held out her hand. Jake looked at it, then at her face, then back at her hand. This was insane. This was impossible. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not in real life. But her hand was there, extended and waiting. And somewhere deep in his gut, Jake knew that his life had just changed forever. The moment he kissed that statue as a joke, everything had shifted. There was no going back now. He took her hand. Her skin was warm, which surprised him. He had expected it to feel like crystal, cold and hard. But it felt human, or close enough. "Okay," Jake said. "Let's go tell Dr. Crawford that I just woke up an ancient alien. This should be fun." Lyra laughed, a sound like bells ringing in the wind. "Fun? Yes. I am beginning to understand why the architects chose humanity. You find humor in the strangest moments." Together they walked out of the plaza toward the camp. Behind them, the statue's empty pedestal stood silent in the fading light of 2 alien suns. And across the galaxy, in dark ships and hidden bases, alarms began to sound as civilizations detected the signal that would change everything. The walk back to camp took 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. Jake kept glancing at Lyra, half expecting her to turn back into stone. She walked beside him with perfect balance, her feet barely seeming to touch the ground. Her clothes had changed too, shifting from the flowing robes carved into the statue to something more practical, like a jumpsuit made of the same crystal material that now looked like fabric. "So," Jake said, because the silence was getting uncomfortable, "you've been a statue for 1,000 years?" "In stasis, yes, waiting." "Waiting for what? Someone to kiss you?" "Waiting for a species that understood the value of spontaneous affection. Of doing things simply because they feel right, not because they serve a purpose." Jake shook his head. "That's a pretty specific thing to wait for." The architects learned over millions of years that intelligence alone is not enough. Logic alone is not enough. Efficiency alone is not enough. True wisdom requires something else, something your species has in abundance. Before Jake could ask what she meant, they reached the camp. Dr. Crawford was standing outside the main research tent, talking to her assistant, a young guy named Peter. She looked up as Jake approached, and her expression went from annoyed to shocked in less than a second. "Morrison, what is that?" she demanded, staring at Lyra. "This is Lyra," Jake said. "She used to be the statue in the plaza. I kind of woke her up." For a moment, nobody spoke. Peter's jaw dropped open. Dr. Crawford's face went through several different expressions, finally settling on something between disbelief and anger. "You did what?" "I kissed the statue and she woke up," Jake said. Saying it out loud made it sound even more ridiculous. "I know how that sounds." You contaminated an archaeological site? Dr. Crawford's voice was rising. You touched an artifact without authorization? With respect, Dr. Crawford, Lyra said, her voice calm and clear. I am not an artifact. I am Lyra of the Architects, and I have been waiting in stasis for a species worthy of our legacy. This human has proven his kind worthy. That got everyone's attention. Within minutes, the entire camp had gathered around. Scientists pulled out scanning devices, pointing them at Lyra. The machines beeped and clicked, displaying readings that made no sense. Dr. Crawford tried to maintain order, but the excitement was too much. Everyone was talking at once, asking questions, trying to understand what was happening. Lyra waited patiently until the noise died down. Then she began to speak, and everyone fell silent to listen. The Architects were my people, she said. We evolved on a world very far from here, so long ago that your species had not yet discovered fire. We spread across the galaxy, building cities, creating technology, advancing our understanding of the universe. We thought we were the pinnacle of existence. She paused, her strange eyes distant, remembering. But we learned that we were wrong. Intelligence is not the end of evolution. We discovered that consciousness can exist beyond physical form, that beings can ascend to a higher plane of existence. So the Architects made a choice. We would leave this galaxy, ascending to become something greater. But before we left, we wanted to leave something behind. The cities, Peter asked. More than that. We left ourselves. 12 of us volunteered to remain in stasis, stored in crystalline form, scattered across the galaxy in our greatest cities. We became living archives, repositories of all our knowledge and technology, but we did not want this knowledge to fall into just any hands. We wanted it to go to a species that truly deserved it. Dr. Crawford had pulled out a recording device and was capturing every word. What made humans worthy? She asked. Lyra smiled at Jake. Your capacity for illogical kindness, your ability to find joy in meaningless gestures, your tendency to do things simply because they make you happy, even when there is no survival advantage. Most species in the galaxy are driven purely by logic and efficiency. They calculate every action, measure every choice. But humans are different. She gestured to Jake. This man kissed me on a dare for a meaningless amount of credits, simply because the idea amused him. There was no logic to it, no calculation, no expectation of reward. It was pure spontaneous affection. That is what unlocked my stasis. That is what 1,000 years of careful study by serious scholars could not accomplish. The Architects built these archives to respond only to species capable of such genuine illogical kindness. Jake felt his face getting hot. Everyone was looking at him now. It really was just a joke, he mumbled. I know, Lyra said. That is exactly the point. Dr. Crawford cleared her throat. You mentioned 12 archives. Where are the others? Scattered across explored space. I can provide the coordinates. But there is something you must understand. The awakening of even one archive sends a signal across the galaxy. Other civilizations will have detected it. They have been searching for our archives for centuries, hoping to claim our technology for themselves. Now they know that humanity has found one of us and they know how to activate us. Is that bad? Jake asked. It depends on the civilization. Some will want to trade with humanity, to learn from you. Others will want to capture humans and force you to activate the remaining archives for them. And some will simply try to destroy the archives and your species to prevent you from becoming too powerful. The camp fell silent. The excitement drained away, replaced by a cold understanding of danger. They were suddenly very far from Earth, very alone and very vulnerable. How long do we have? Dr. Crawford asked quietly. The nearest hostile civilization, the Gen Collective, maintains ships in this region of space. If they detected the signal immediately and responded at maximum speed, they could arrive within 30 hours. Then we need to leave, Dr. Crawford said. She turned to her team. Pack everything essential. We leave for the ship in 1 hour. Morrison, you stay with Lyra. Peter, contact the Horizon's Edge and tell Captain Foster we need an immediate evacuation. The camp erupted into organized chaos. Scientists ran to their tents, grabbing equipment and data cores. Peter sprinted toward the communications array. Jake found himself standing still while everyone else moved around him, trying to process what was happening. Lyra touched his shoulder gently. You are afraid. Shouldn't I be? You just told us that aliens might come kill us because I kissed a statue. Yes, but you are also excited. I can see it in your face. Your species thrives on challenges. You find joy even in danger. It is remarkable. Jake couldn't argue with that. Underneath the fear, there was a strange thrill running through him. His boring job fixing machines had just turned into something out of a science fiction movie. It was terrifying, but it was also the most alive he had felt in years. The hour passed quickly. The team loaded their essential gear into transports and began the journey back to where the horizon's edge had landed, about 5 miles from the ruins. Jake rode in the lead transport with Dr. Crawford and Lyra. Nobody spoke much. They were all processing what Lyra had told them, trying to understand what it meant for humanity. When they reached the ship, Captain Ryan Foster was waiting at the airlock. He was a tall man in his 40s with gray hair and a calm expression that never seemed to change, no matter how crazy things got. He looked at Lyra for a long moment, then at Jake. "Morrison," he said, "I hear you've had an interesting day." "That's one way to put it, sir. Get everyone aboard. We leave in 20 minutes. He turned to Lyra. "Ma'am, we have a lot to discuss, but first I need to know if you're a threat to this ship or crew." "I am not," Lyra said simply. "I exist to help humanity, not harm it. Though I understand your caution, it speaks well of your species that you do not trust blindly." Captain Foster nodded once. "Good enough for now. Welcome aboard the Horizon's Edge." As the ship prepared for takeoff, Jake found himself in the observation deck watching the alien planet fall away beneath them. Lyra stood beside him, her reflection visible in the glass. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now we find the other archives before hostile forces can destroy them or capture them. Now we teach your species how to use the knowledge we offer. Now we prepare humanity for its place among the greater civilizations of the galaxy." She paused. "And now you become more than a maintenance technician, whether you want to or not." Jake watched the planet disappear as the ship jumped to faster than light speed. His life had changed the moment he kissed that statue. There was no going back. He could only move forward into whatever came next. "I guess Connor owes me 20 credits, he said. Lyra laughed, that musical sound that seemed to fill the entire room. "Yes? Though I suspect you will earn far more than that before this is over." In the darkness of space, the Horizon's Edge raced toward Earth, carrying news that would change humanity forever. And far behind them, the first Gen ships arrived at Kepler 442b, their sensors scanning the ruins for any trace of the humans who had dared to wake an architect. The journey back to Earth took 6 days. During that time, Lyra used the ship's conference room as a classroom, teaching anyone who would listen about the architects and their legacy. Jake attended every session, partly because Lyra seemed to expect him to be there, and partly because he was genuinely curious. "There are 12 archives total," Lyra explained, projecting a holographic map of the galaxy. 12 points glowed on the map, scattered across hundreds of light years. Each archive contains different knowledge. I hold information about cultural development, language, and social structures. The others contain technology, medicine, military strategy, physics, biology, and more. "Why split it up?" Dr. Crawford asked. She had spent the last 6 days examining Lyra with every scanner the ship had, trying to understand how a being could transform from crystal to flesh. So far, the results had been inconclusive. To prevent any single archive from being too powerful if it fell into the wrong hands, and to ensure that a species must work together, must travel and explore, must prove themselves repeatedly rather than just once. Finding all 12 archives is itself a test. Katie Barnes, the ship's pilot, raised her hand. She was Jake's age, with short red hair and a collection of scars from her years in the merchant fleet. She and Jake had become friends during the long voyage out to Kepler 442b, bonding over their shared status as the ship's non-scientists. "What kind of technology are we talking about?" Katie asked. "Faster than light travel that doesn't require months to cross the galaxy. Energy sources that never run out. Medical treatments that can cure any disease and extend life by centuries. Weapons that can protect you from any threat. Construction methods that can build cities in days. Agricultural techniques that can feed billions without exhausting your planet. Everything your species needs to become a true galactic power." The room fell silent. The implications were enormous. Humanity was still struggling with basic interstellar travel. The Horizon's Edge was one of only a dozen ships capable of traveling beyond the solar system, and even then, the journeys took months. The idea of having technology that could change all that was almost too big to comprehend. "But there's a catch," Jake said. It wasn't a question. There was always a catch, Lyra nodded. The final archive, the 12th one, contains the location of the central repository. That is where the true legacy waits, the complete collected knowledge of the architects. But it will only open if humanity proves that they will not misuse it. The architects designed a test, one that cannot be cheated or bypassed. If your species fails, the repository will destroy itself and all the knowledge it contains. What kind of test? Captain Foster asked. He had been sitting quietly in the back of the room listening. I do not know. Each archive knows only part of the plan. We will learn more as we awaken the others. But I can tell you this. It will test the very qualities that made you worthy of waking us. Your capacity for kindness, for generosity, for illogical compassion. If humanity loses those qualities in pursuit of power, you will fail. The ship arrived at Earth on the 7th day. Jake stood in the observation deck with half the crew, watching the blue planet grow larger as they approached. He had been born on Earth but had spent most of his adult life in space, working on various ships and stations. It was strange to think that he might be bringing something back to Earth that would change it forever. The ship docked at Gateway Station, the massive orbital platform that served as Earth's main spaceport. Within an hour of docking, a delegation from the United Earth Council arrived, demanding to meet with Lyra. Captain Foster, Dr. Crawford, and Jake accompanied her to the meeting. The council chamber was a large room with curved walls showing live feeds from Earth below. 50 representatives sat in a semicircle, representing the major governments and organizations of Earth. At the center sat Chancellor Victoria Lang, an older woman with steel-gray hair who had led the council for the past decade. Lyra repeated her story for the council. She showed them the coordinates of the other archives. She explained the technology that could be theirs. And she warned them about the civilizations that would try to stop humanity from claiming the legacy. How many other civilizations know about this? Chancellor Lang asked. At least a dozen major powers. The Gen Collective is the most aggressive. They are an insectoid species that values efficiency and conformity above all else. They have been searching for architect technology for 200 years. They will see humanity as a threat. Can they reach Earth? Not immediately. They are based far from here, but they will come eventually. The question is whether humanity will be ready when they arrive. The council spent 2 hours debating. Jake watched from the side of the room, trying not to fidget. Finally, Chancellor Lang called for a vote. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would pursue the archives. They would send teams to find and awaken the remaining architects, and they would prepare for the possibility of conflict with other civilizations. We'll need to split into multiple teams, Dr. Crawford said when the council adjourned. We can't search for 11 archives with one ship. Agreed, Captain Foster said. But there's another problem. Based on what Lyra told us, the archives respond best to genuine human emotion. We can't just send soldiers and scientists. We need people who can connect with the archives on a human level. Everyone turned to look at Jake. He had been trying to stay invisible in the corner, but it didn't work. Morrison woke the first archive, Dr. Crawford said. It makes sense that he should be involved in finding the others. I'm just a maintenance tech, Jake protested. I fix things. I'm not a diplomat or a soldier or anything special. That's exactly why you're perfect, Lyra said. She had been quiet during the council meeting, but now she spoke up. The archives will not respond to people trying to be impressive or important. They respond to authenticity. You are genuine, Jake Morrison. You do not pretend to be something you are not. That quality is rare and valuable. Jake wanted to argue, but he saw the logic. He had woken Lyra by being himself, by doing something stupid and spontaneous. Trying to be serious and important probably wouldn't work on the other archives. Fine, he said. I'll help. But I don't know what I'm doing. None of us do, Captain Foster said. That's never stopped humanity before. Over the next week, Earth prepared. 3 ships were outfitted for long-range exploration: the Horizon's Edge, the Star Runner, and the New Dawn. Each would carry a team to search for different archives. Dr. Crawford would lead the Star Runner team. Captain Foster would continue commanding the Horizon's Edge. A military commander named Colonel Helen Price would lead the New Dawn. Jake was assigned to the Horizon's Edge, along with Katie, a young engineer named Sam Parker, and a xenobiologist named Lauren Webb. Lyra would accompany them, since the archives would need to communicate with her to verify that humanity was still worthy. The day before departure, Jake went to visit his younger brother Ben, who lived in Chicago. Ben was a teacher, completely uninterested in space travel. He had always thought Jake's job was weird. So you kissed a statue and now you're trying to save humanity. Ben said, shaking his head. Only you, Jake. I didn't plan any of this, that's what makes it perfect. You never plan anything. You just kind of stumble through life and somehow it works out. I'm not sure this is working out. We might start an interstellar war, Ben laughed. Yeah, but at least you won't be bored. The next morning, Jake boarded the Horizon's Edge for the second time. The ship had been upgraded with new weapons and shields, courtesy of some basic technology Lyra had shared with Earth's engineers. It wasn't much, just enough to give them a fighting chance if they encountered hostile forces. The first archive on their list was located in the Tau Ceti system, about 12 light-years from Earth. According to Lyra, it was guarded by a being named Orion, who specialized in military strategy and defensive technology. If they could wake him, humanity would gain the knowledge to defend itself. But they had to get there first. And they had to do it before the Gen or any other civilization beat them to it. As the ship prepared to launch, Jake stood in the cargo bay, checking equipment. Katie found him there looking nervous. You okay? She asked. I keep thinking about what Lyra said, that other civilizations will try to capture humans to force the archives to open. That means people like us are suddenly valuable. Like kidnapping valuable? Yeah, I've been thinking about that too. It's creepy. We could die out there. This isn't like before when we were just exploring. This is dangerous. Katie was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. My grandmother used to say that the only way to live a boring life is to play it safe. I didn't sign up for this job because I wanted boring. Jake had to smile back. Fair point. The ship launched an hour later, breaking free of Earth's gravity and accelerating into the darkness. Through the observation windows, Jake watched Earth shrink behind them, a blue marble against the black. Somewhere on that planet, billions of people were going about their normal lives, unaware that their future was being decided by a small crew searching for ancient alien statues. Lyra joined him at the window. You are afraid again. Is it that obvious? Fear is not weakness. Fear is wisdom, acknowledging danger while choosing to act anyway. Your species excels at this. You know the risks, yet you go forward. It is admirable. I just keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. Then think also about the ways it could go right. Imagine your species with the knowledge to cure any disease, to travel anywhere in the galaxy, to live for centuries and explore wonders you cannot yet imagine. That future is possible. You are helping to make it real. Jake nodded slowly. She was right. The risks were enormous, but so were the rewards. And someone had to take the first steps. It might as well be him. A maintenance tech who had stumbled into the most important job in human history by kissing a statue on a dare. The ship jumped to faster than light speed, and the stars stretched into lines around them. Somewhere ahead in the Tau Ceti system, another archive waited, and behind them in the dark spaces between stars, other ships were beginning to move, converging on the same destination. The Horizon's Edge dropped out of faster than light speed at the edge of the Tau Ceti system. Immediately, warning alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Captain Foster's voice came over the intercom, calm but urgent. All hands to stations. We have company. Jake rushed to the bridge with Lyra. The main view screen showed 3 ships in orbit around Titan's shadow, a moon circling the system's largest gas giant. The ships were unlike anything Jake had seen before. They were angular and dark, covered in spikes that made them look like enormous insects. Gen warships, Lyra confirmed, her voice tight. They arrived before us, and can they detect us? Katie asked from the pilot's seat. Not yet, Sam said, watching his sensor displays. We came in far enough away that we're just another piece of space debris to their scanners. But if we get closer, they'll see us. Captain Foster studied the screen. Lyra, is the archive on the moon's surface? Below it. The architects built it in an underground cavern system, protected by layers of ice and rock. The Gen are scanning the surface, but they have not found the entrance yet. How long before they do? Hours, perhaps a day. The caverns are well hidden, but the Gen are thorough. Then we need to get down there first. Captain Foster turned to his crew. Ideas? Lauren, the xenobiologist, spoke up. The Gen ships are in high orbit. If we approach from the far side of the moon using the moon itself as a shield, we might be able to land without being detected. It's risky, Sam said. If they pick us up on sensors, we're outgunned 3-1. Everything about this mission is risky. Captain Foster said. Prepare a landing shuttle. Small crew. Morrison, you're going. Katie, you'll pilot. Sam Lauren, you're with them. Lyra, I assume you're going too. I must. The archive will not wake without me present to verify humanity's worthiness. Then gear up. You launch in 30 minutes. The shuttle was a small craft designed for quick trips between ship and surface. It had minimal weapons and shields built for speed and stealth rather than combat. Jake strapped into a seat in the passenger compartment, trying to control his breathing. His hands were shaking. Sam noticed and gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. First combat mission? First any kind of dangerous mission. Usually I just fix things that are already broken. Well, try not to break yourself. We need you to wake up that statue. Katie ran through the pre-flight checks from the pilot's seat. Everyone secure? Good. Launching in 3, 2, 1. The shuttle dropped away from the horizon's edge and dove toward the moon. Katie flew with confidence, using the moon's gravity to slingshot them around to the far side, away from the Gen ships. Jake watched the ice-covered surface rush up to meet them through the shuttle's windows. There, Lyra said, pointing to a ridge of mountains. The entrance is in that valley beneath those formations. Katie brought the shuttle down in a smooth landing. The surface of Titan's shadow was frozen solid, the temperature outside reading negative 200 degrees. The team put on environmental suits and exited the shuttle. Even through the suit's insulation, Jake could feel the cold trying to get in. The valley was eerily beautiful. Ice formations rose like crystal trees, catching the light from the distant sun and scattering it in rainbow colors. The sky was dark purple, and the gas giant loomed overhead, taking up half the sky. This way, Lyra said, leading them between the ice formations. She seemed to know exactly where she was going, following a path that wasn't visible to human eyes. They found the entrance after 20 minutes of walking. It looked like a natural crack in the ice, barely wide enough for a person to fit through. But when Lyra touched the ice, it rippled and opened wider, revealing steps leading down into darkness. The architects designed many hidden doors, she explained. They did not want their archives to be easy to find. The team descended into the ice. Jake turned on his suit's lights and the beam reflected off walls of pure crystal, creating a dazzling display. The passage went down for what felt like miles, though Jake's suit computer said it was only about 2,000 feet. The temperature slowly increased as they descended, rising from lethal cold to merely freezing. The passage opened into an enormous cavern. The ceiling was lost in darkness above them, and the floor was covered in formations that glowed with a soft blue light. At the center of the cavern stood another statue, similar to the one Jake had found on Kepler 442b, but different in subtle ways. This one was in a warrior's pose, one hand raised as if holding a weapon, the other extended forward in a defensive gesture. Orion, Lyra said softly. He was our greatest strategist, the one who defended our worlds from threats for thousands of years. He volunteered to remain behind to share his knowledge of defense and protection. Jake approached the statue slowly. Unlike the first time, he knew what he was doing now. The statue would only wake if he showed genuine human emotion, something spontaneous and authentic. But how was he supposed to be spontaneous when he knew what the result would be? I can't just kiss this one, he said. It worked the first time because I didn't know. Now it would be fake. Then do something else, Katie suggested. Be yourself. That worked last time. Jake stood in front of the statue thinking, what would be genuine? What would be truly human? He remembered what his grandfather used to say. The old man had been a soldier, fought in 3 wars, seen things that gave him nightmares until the day he died. But he had also been the kindest person Jake had ever known. He used to tell Jake that the best weapon against fear was humor, that laughter was the most human thing a person could do. Jake reached into his suit's pocket and pulled out a small harmonica. It was his grandfather's, one of the few things Jake had inherited. He had brought it with him from Earth, not sure why. Now he knew. He played a song his grandfather had taught him, a silly tune about a soldier who kept losing his boots. It was ridiculous, completely out of place in this ancient alien cavern. But it was real. It was human. It was the memory of his grandfather, who had faced death with a joke and a smile. When the song ended, Jake looked up at the statue. My grandfather would have loved all this, he said. He always said that life was too short to be serious all the time. So here I am, playing a harmonica to an alien statue in an ice cave, hoping to save humanity. He would have thought that was hilarious. Then he stepped forward and placed his hand on the statue's chest, right where a human heart would be. "Wake up," Jake said. "We need your help." The statue's eyes opened. The crystal rippled and changed. Within moments, Orion stood before them, tall and imposing, with features sharper than Lyra's but equally beautiful. He looked at Jake for a long moment, then smiled. "You honor your dead with music and humor," Orion said. His voice was deeper than Lyra's, like distant thunder. "You carry their memory with you and let it guide you. This is wisdom. This is humanity." "You're awake," Jake said, relief flooding through him. "I am, and I see that my sister Lyra has found worthy humans indeed." He looked at the others. "But we do not have time for proper greetings. I sense hostile forces above. The Gen have detected your presence." As if to confirm his words, Sam's suit radio crackled. Captain Foster's voice came through, distorted by static. "Horizon to landing team. The Gen have found you. 3 ships are moving to intercept. You need to get out of there now." "We can't," Katie said. "It'll take us 30 minutes to climb back to the surface." "Then you have a problem," Captain Foster said. "Because those ships will be on top of you in 10. Orion held up his hand. "I can help. I hold knowledge of architect defensive technology. Give me access to your ship's systems." "What are you going to do?" Captain Foster asked. "Give humanity its first real weapon. But I need authorization. I need someone to consciously choose to accept this power, understanding that it brings responsibility." Everyone looked at Jake again. He was getting tired of being the one making these decisions. "What kind of weapon?" he asked. "Energy shields that can withstand any conventional attack. Plasma weapons that can disable ships without destroying them. And most importantly, an understanding of defensive strategy that will let you protect yourselves without becoming aggressors. I will not give humanity tools of conquest, but I will give you the means to defend yourselves and others." Jake thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "Do it." Orion closed his eyes. Jake's suit computer began displaying code scrolling past faster than he could read. Data was being transmitted, enormous amounts of it flowing from Orion to the horizon's edge. On the ship above, Captain Foster watched his displays light up with new information. Weapon systems he had never seen before appeared in his tactical menu. Shield generators began reconfiguring themselves, becoming more powerful. "Shields at 300%. Sam's voice came through the radio from the surface. "Captain, I'm seeing schematics for weapons I don't even know how to describe." "We'll figure it out," Captain Foster said. "Right now, we need to buy the ground team time to evacuate. Helm, bring us around. Let's see what these new shields can do." The horizon's edge broke from its hiding position and flew directly at the 3 Gen warships. The Gen, surprised by the sudden appearance of the human ship, opened fire immediately. Green energy beams lanced through space, striking the horizon's edge. The shields held. The beams splashed against the barrier of energy surrounding the ship, dissipating harmlessly. "Shields holding at 95%, Sam reported, amazement in his voice. "Captain, these shields are incredible." "Return fire," Captain Foster ordered. "Disable, don't destroy." The horizon's edge fired its new plasma weapons. Blue bolts of energy struck the nearest Gen ship, overloading its systems. The ship went dark, drifting but intact. The other 2 Gen ships retreated, uncertain how to handle an enemy that had suddenly become much more dangerous. On the surface, Jake and the others ran for the shuttle. Orion moved with them, his long strides eating up distance. They reached the shuttle in half the time it had taken to walk from it, piled inside, and Katie launched immediately. "We're clear," she reported to the horizon's edge. "Coming up to dock." The shuttle climbed through the atmosphere and locked onto the larger ship. Within minutes, the entire team was back aboard, and Captain Foster ordered a retreat. The horizon's edge jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving the confused Gen ships behind. In the ship's conference room, Jake sat with his head in his hands, trying to process what had just happened. They had found the second archive. They had survived a confrontation with hostile aliens, and they had just given humanity weapons that could change everything. Lyra sat beside him. "You did well. I just played a harmonica and hoped for the best." "Exactly. You were yourself, genuine and human. That is all the archives ask." Orion stood at the head of the table looking at the assembled humans. "You have 10 more archives to find, and now the entire galaxy knows you are searching. The hunt has truly begun." Jake looked up at him. "No pressure or anything." Orion smiled, a fierce expression that was somehow reassuring. Pressure is good. It reveals character. And humanity's character is proving to be exceptional. Over the next 6 months, humanity changed. The knowledge from Lyra and Orion spread across Earth, transforming technology overnight. Ships that had taken months to cross space now made the journey in weeks. Diseases that had killed millions were suddenly curable. Energy that had cost fortunes became nearly free. The world was being remade, but it came at a cost. The hunt for the remaining archives had become a race, and humanity was not the only participant. Jake had become something he never wanted to be: famous. The man who woke the architects. The human who started it all with a kiss. Every news channel wanted to interview him. Governments wanted his advice. Other ships wanted him on their crews. He hated every minute of it. The Horizon's Edge had found 3 more archives in those 6 months. Each awakening had been different. The third archive, a being named Cassia who specialized in medicine, had woken when Lauren had cried over an image of children suffering from a plague. The fourth, a scientist named Theron, had woken when Sam had laughed at his own failed experiment, showing the ability to find humor in mistakes. The fifth, an artist named Nova, had woken when Katie had sung an old folk song her mother taught her. Each archive shared their knowledge freely, each warning that the final test was coming, that humanity would have to prove they deserved the full legacy. The other Earth ships had found 4 more archives. That left only 3, including the final one that held the location of the central repository. But the galaxy was closing in. The Gen Collective had declared humanity a threat and demanded the archives be turned over to them. The Sovereign Assembly, a coalition of older civilizations, had issued sanctions against Earth forbidding trade or contact. Smaller powers were choosing sides, some supporting humanity, others joining the growing opposition. Earth itself was changing too. Some people wanted to use the architect technology to expand aggressively, to claim territory while humanity had the advantage. Others wanted to retreat, to hide the archives and avoid conflict. The United Earth Council was fracturing under the pressure. Jake saw it all from the Horizon's Edge, watching the news feeds and wondering how something that had started as a joke had grown into this. "We should have just left the statues alone," he said one evening to Lyra. They were in the observation deck, watching stars drift past. Would that have been better? Your species struggling with limited resources, unaware of their potential. At least we weren't on the edge of a galactic war. The war was always coming, Jake. The Gen expand constantly. The Sovereign Assembly controls through fear. Your species was always going to encounter them eventually. Now at least you have tools to defend yourselves, and weapons to attack others. Yes, that is the test. Having power is easy. Choosing not to misuse it is what separates wisdom from mere intelligence. The call came 3 weeks later. The New Dawn had found the 11th archive, a being named Atlas who specialized in engineering and construction. That meant only 1 archive remained, the 12th, the keeper of the final coordinates. According to the combined knowledge of the 11 awakened architects, the 12th archive was located near the center of the galaxy, in a region of space that was difficult to reach and surrounded by dangerous phenomena. It would take weeks to get there, and every major civilization in the galaxy would be racing to arrive first. The United Earth Council called an emergency meeting. Every ship captain, every awakened architect, every key advisor was summoned. Jake attended via hologram from the Horizon's Edge, standing in a virtual recreation of the council chamber alongside hundreds of others. Chancellor Lang looked exhausted. She had aged years in the past months, the pressure of leading humanity through this crisis taking its toll. "We stand at a crossroads," she said. "The location of the 12th archive will be discovered soon. Multiple civilizations are converging on that region of space. When the archive wakes, it will trigger the final test. The test that determines whether humanity receives the full legacy of the architects." She paused, looking around the chamber. "But we face a more immediate problem. The Gen and the Sovereign Assembly have issued an ultimatum. If we attempt to reach the 12th archive, they will attack Earth. They have massed a fleet of over 100 warships in this system. Our defenses are strong thanks to the architect technology. But we are not invincible. A battle would cost millions of lives." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some shouted that humanity should fight, that they couldn't back down now. Others demanded surrender, insisting that no technology was worth the destruction of Earth. The noise rose until Lang slammed her hand on the podium. We need a decision. Captain Foster, what is your assessment? Captain Foster stood. His image appeared larger in the chamber, visible to everyone. We can win a defensive battle. Orion's technology gives us that capability, but winning would require destroying much of the enemy fleet. That means killing potentially millions of beings, and even in victory we would become exactly what the architects fear, a species that gained power and immediately used it to destroy others. So we surrender? Someone shouted. I didn't say that. Captain Foster replied calmly. I'm saying that maybe the test has already begun. Maybe the final test isn't at the 12th archive. Maybe it's here now with a fleet overhead and a choice before us. Jake felt something click in his mind. Captain Foster was right. The architects had said they were looking for species capable of illogical kindness, of spontaneous generosity. They were looking for species that could choose compassion over calculation. He activated his microphone. I have an idea. It's probably stupid. Every face in the chamber turned toward his image. Go ahead, Morrison, Chancellor Lang said. We share it, all of it. Every piece of knowledge the archives have given us. We broadcast it openly. Give it to every civilization, including the ones threatening us. We prove that we're not going to hoard the power. We prove we understand that knowledge is meant to be shared. The silence that followed was total. Then the chamber exploded with reactions. Some people laughed. Some shouted that Jake was insane. Some demanded his removal from the meeting. But Lyra, standing beside Jake's hologram, smiled. Yes, that is the answer. Are you sure? Chancellor Lang asked her. The architects left our legacy for species capable of genuine generosity. What could be more generous than giving away the greatest treasure in the galaxy, freely to everyone, including your enemies? It is illogical. It provides no strategic advantage. It leaves you vulnerable. It's also the most human thing we could do, Jake said. Humans have always been at their best when they help others, even when it costs them. We send aid to places that hate us. We share medical discoveries instead of hoarding them. We create art and music and give it away for free. That's who we are, or who we should be. Dr. Crawford spoke up. If we do this, we lose our advantage. We become just one more species among many. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe we become the species that changed how the galaxy works. Maybe we prove that cooperation is better than domination. The debate lasted for hours, but slowly, gradually, people began to agree. Not because it was the smart choice, but because it felt right. Because it was what humanity, at its best, would do. The vote was close, but it passed. Within hours, Earth began broadcasting every piece of architect knowledge openly across all frequencies. The specifications for advanced drives, the medical treatments, the energy systems, the agricultural techniques, everything humanity had learned from the archives, given away freely. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The Gen Collective held fire, their command structure paralyzed by a strategy they had never encountered. No species had ever voluntarily given up such an advantage. The Sovereign Assembly withdrew their fleet, unable to justify attacking a species that was actively helping them. Smaller civilizations began downloading the information, their scientists and engineers rushing to understand what they had been given. And then the archives responded. All 11 awakened architects spoke simultaneously, their voices reaching across space through methods humanity didn't understand. Humanity has passed the test. The final archive will wake for them. Jake was on the horizon's edge when it happened, racing toward the center of the galaxy with Lyra and Orion. The 12th archive stood on a small planet orbiting a black hole, protected by dangerous radiation and gravitational forces that made approach nearly impossible. But the ship's improved shields, thanks to Orion's knowledge, got them through. The statue was smaller than the others, almost human-sized, depicting a figure in a simple robe with hands outstretched in welcome. As Jake approached, it woke without him needing to do anything. The test had already been passed. I am Meridian, the being said, its voice gentle and warm. I am the keeper of the path, and I am pleased to finally meet humanity. You have proven yourselves worthy beyond our greatest hopes. Because we gave away the knowledge? Jake asked. Because you understood that true strength lies not in what you keep, but in what you share. Because when faced with an enemy fleet and the possibility of destruction, you chose kindness over fear. Because you trusted in the goodness of others even when logic said you should not. Meridian touched Jake's forehead and suddenly he understood. The location of the central repository flooded his mind. Not a place in normal space, but a pocket dimension, accessible only to those who had proven themselves through all 12 tests. When the horizon's edge arrived at the coordinates Meridian provided, they found not a planet or station, but a doorway in space itself. The ship passed through, and Jake found himself standing in a place that shouldn't exist. It was a library, impossibly vast, filled with knowledge accumulated over millions of years. Not just architect knowledge, but the wisdom of thousands of species that had come before. Technology, art, philosophy, history, all waiting to be learned. But more than that, it was a meeting place. As Jake walked through the halls, he saw others. Beings from across the galaxy, all of them there because their species had passed similar tests. All of them welcome to learn and share and grow together. The architects themselves appeared then, not in physical form, but as presences that Jake could feel rather than see. "Welcome to the legacy," they said. "This is not an ending but a beginning. Humanity has earned its place among the wise species of the galaxy, not through conquest or domination, but through compassion and generosity. You will face challenges ahead. Some species will resist the change you have brought, but you have allies now, and you have proven that you understand the most important truth, that existence is not a competition to be won, but an experience to be shared." Jake stood in that impossible library, surrounded by knowledge beyond imagination, and thought about how it all started. A dare, a joke, a spontaneous kiss given to an ancient statue. Connor had offered 20 credits. Jake had gained something much more valuable. The knowledge that humanity, for all its flaws and mistakes, had something special. The ability to act with kindness even when it made no sense, to find humor in darkness, to give freely without expecting return. 3 months later, Jake was back on Earth, walking through a park in Chicago. The world was still changing, still adapting to the knowledge they had shared and received. But it was changing together, with allies from across the galaxy helping each other understand and grow. His brother Ben found him sitting by the lake watching the sunset. "So," Ben said, sitting down beside him, "you saved humanity by giving away the biggest treasure in history. Only you would think that was a good idea." "It was either that or start a war," Jake said. "Still, most people would have kept the power. Most people aren't as stupid as me." Ben laughed. "True. But maybe the galaxy needed someone stupid enough to think that being kind was more important than being strong." Jake smiled. Somewhere in the sky above them, the horizon's edge was being prepared for another journey. Lyra wanted to show humanity more of the galaxy, to introduce them to the other species who had earned their place in the legacy. Jake would be going with her, because apparently kissing one statue meant he was stuck with this job forever. But he didn't mind. The universe was vast and strange and full of wonders, and humanity, with all its illogical kindness and spontaneous generosity, was finally ready to explore it properly. "You know what the craziest part is," Jake said to Ben. "Connor still owes me 20 credits for that dare." Ben shook his head. "Of course that's what you're thinking about. You literally saved the world and you're worried about 20 credits. It's the principle of the thing." They sat together as the sun set, two brothers on a planet that had just become part of something much larger. The galaxy had waited 1,000 years for humanity to arrive, and humanity in its own strange and wonderful way had proven it was worth the wait. Above them, the stars began to appear, each one now a potential destination, a place to explore and learn and share. The legacy of the architects was no longer hidden. It belonged to everyone, freely given and freely received. And somewhere in space, in that impossible library between dimensions, the architects smiled. Their test had worked better than they had dared hope. They had waited for a species crazy enough to kiss ancient statues on dares, generous enough to give away power freely, and brave enough to choose kindness over fear. They had waited for humanity. And humanity had finally arrived.